Hey everyone, welcome to Get the Bag podcast, episode 7. I'm your host, Gladia Castro. Tim Park, my co host. What's up?
Hey, what's up?
Uh, now, guys, remember this is a live show, so feel free to post your questions throughout the episode, and we'll make sure to set up some time at the end for some Q&A. So,
hmm
today's episode, 3 tips on virtual wholesaling, is a question we actually get a lot on social
Yes.
media or just people starting out or maybe they close some deals in their local market and now want to make the jump virtually. So this will be a really fun topic, hopefully educational and helpful for a lot of you guys.
Yeah. I think it's a really good topic because a lot of people do ask about this question because some people think their market may be a little tough or a lot of competition, but as we know, those are just excuses. But
Right.
we wanted to address this question because it's important because as you grow in your business, you definitely have to expand into other markets. So virtually is one of the key things to make your business successful.
Yeah, definitely. And we both live in California,
hmm
so it's I don't starting off it can be a little intimidating
hmm
marketing out in California because you're literally competing against corporations, hedge funds, people with deep pockets that have maybe a budget of, you know, 20,000 a month or more
hmm
that
hmm
they're using. So it's like, it's just us kind of going in there. So um, I think virtual wholesaling is a great opportunity to really um, kind of venture out into smaller markets where you can really learn and like focus on the process instead of like getting no answers or getting
hmm
shut down.
Yeah.
And it's also different clientele. So really excited for these 3 tips because I think it's been helpful for us. We're both in virtual markets. Tim, you've closed deals in virtual markets.
Yes.
I've gotten them locked up. All my deals have been local,
Mm.
but I've really started kind of refining my process and have been virtual as well. I've gotten some stuff locked up, but either fell through due to title issues or whatever the case may be.
Right.
But I actually am working on locking some up right now, and so we'll talk about like what that process is. But what let's hit it off with the first tip because I think this is really important when it comes to picking a virtual market.
Right. So I think the first tip is going to be research, right? So it's a thing where you have to research the market that you're going to go into, target different properties that are selling, being renovated in the market, and you can just look either on Zillow or even call your local real estate agent, right? Do
Mm,
your due diligence, right? So you can call maybe two or three different real estate agents and seeing what areas are actually people are buying in, uh, what they've been renovating. Maybe it's mostly been 2 bedrooms or 3 bedrooms or what. So you can get all this information from a local realtor, and that's the thing is that realtors it's more of a partnership and an understanding of what they can do and what they
mhm,
can provide in that market, but you still can do your marketing and doing your research yourself. So that's kind of like one way to kind of do your research, and top sellers or learn about the laws in that area as well, community development.
that's a big one.
Yeah, yeah. So, and the community development is more of what's building in that area. Like I know in Kansas City
Right.
and downtown, there is like a people mover that just went in, I think last year or the year before. So that people mover is going to get stop in different areas for more people to have access to go to work, get to places. So
Right.
those are more desirable areas around that where people can walk to the people mover and get to work, right? So those are
Right.
important things to know when you're going into a new market, right? And
Yeah, I think that's really important. Like the laws, I think in and of itself are
yeah.
is like we can probably maybe expand a little bit more on that, but a lot of times people kind of don't know where to start or like what does market research look like. There's so many tools out there. If you haven't joined like a specific group, like YouTube is out there, like there's the list
Mm-hmm.
source hack to see like, okay, where in this specific area, where are the cash buyers? Because what happens too is like either they'll pick a market that's too rural, like
Mm-hmm.
way out in the weeds, and like there's no cash buyers. They may get something locked up, but there's no cash buyers to sell it to, or maybe they'll jump into a really, really competitive, especially starting out, like we mentioned, where it's like they just can't get a break. They can't get anybody on the phones, or everybody tells them like, um, leave me alone, take me off your list. I think it's really it can be really overwhelming. So taking like
Mm-hmm.
one step at a time. I think a realtor is a lot of things that people do not do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is putting yourself out there. People just want to kind of do it their own way, and it's like real estate is all about connections and who you know
Mm-hmm.
and relationships as well. So, and I think also going back to the laws is if
Yeah.
you can get in touch with a really good with a realtor that's investor friendly, because they're not all realtors
Yeah.
are built the same, and we love
Very
our
true.
realtors. But if you can find somebody that you kind of jive with and
Mm-hmm.
kind of have an agreement with, I think they can kind of show you like, oh no, actually this is what's happening. Because there, I mean, specific markets, I think we were talking about this last night.
Mm-hmm.
There are specific markets where now there's laws against wholesaling. So
Yeah.
you don't want to go into a market if it's like illegal to wholesale.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there's specific markets that like they just changed the law, like Atlanta is one.
Right.
So I just can list a few, like Atlanta, Philadelphia, um, there's
Illinois.
Illinois is a big one. That was the first one that really kind of dropped. So you actually have to have a realtor. And these other states are getting into, possibly getting a wholesale license or just making sure that you execute the contract like it says.
Mm,
So maybe in some of these states it's a double close instead of just a signing, right? So just do your research in those states. And I'm now getting more aware as I get um, more experience in this field is that, it's important to keep up with those type of things, especially in the markets that you're in. And it's not
right.
like you shouldn't be discouraged um, by these laws. You should s- embrace them and see how you can do your business better to help people, right? And it's
Mm,
the right way. So ultimately, it's yeah, you're wanting to get a deal so you can get paid, but the core of it is helping people, right? Solving their problem.
right.
So my my advice is don't get discouraged in these markets that have these laws. How can you work with this and be a better business person to provide this value to your sellers, right?
Right. And it's all about adapting, right? I think that's what makes a
Mm-hmm.
successful business owner. I mean, Chris talks about a lot of like you have to be ready to pivot. Like you don't know where the
Right.
real estate market is going to take you,
That's
and let
right.
alone like wholesaling. I think he mentioned because he's been in the business for 10, 11 years. They were trying to outlaw it then, but
Mm-hmm.
now there's like a big push, for various reasons. Um, and we can elaborate on that too, but I think it's people easily will see like, oh well, Chris Jefferson is doing it, is killing it in Richmond, or like
Mm-hmm.
Diddy is killing it in Birmingham. I'm going to go where they're going. um, and it's like people want to jump on the bandwagon without doing
Exactly.
any research. They just dive right in, and you may be lucky, but that will also is a recipe for disaster, because again, you're not going in with a plan. You're not going in with like, okay, like how much money do I need to spend? How much money do I need a budget? And that's a big important part of your research is like how much marketing, um, money do I have? And this is why like marketing in California is super different than marketing in maybe KC and Kansas City. It's a little bit different. You have to have more money to market in
Mm-hmm.
California, to reach these sellers. Whereas maybe in KC, it's a little bit easier to get in touch by phone calls or
Mm-hmm.
text messages. So I think understanding your budget, where it's like, all right, I have $500 a month. How can I, how can where can this take me?
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's just having that. You have to go in with a plan,
Right.
and it, like, regardless of where you go, don't just follow where people are going, unless it's like you're working with somebody. And that kind of goes into our second tip, which is
Mm-hmm.
like joint venturing. Is, again, as I mentioned, real estate is all about relationships and who you know. And there's some shady wholesalers, just like there's shady realtors. um, but it's all about relationships. Who do you connect with? And we talk about this a lot in the U as well, is like, um, who, like, partner up with each other. One person lock it up, the other person find a buyer. If
Mm-hmm.
you can really have an understanding with somebody, and maybe somebody that's in that market. So this is also another a good opportunity where you can, maybe I'm in California, and let's say you're in KC, and I want to market there, and I'll be like, hey, I'll cold call, I'll bring in the leads. You have a list of buyers, let's work together. Now there's more things associated with it, attached to joint venture, but I think that's always a great opportunity to get started, because finding somebody that knows what they're doing will really show you the ropes. Like if they're really, if they're a good wholesaler, they're going to show you the ropes, or at least kind of the basics, that to get you going and get you started.
Right. And I think that's really important because it also helps momentum too, because you might have done a deal in your market and then you're joint venturing with someone that is in a different market and that just helps with kind of deal flow
Yeah.
and having someone that's in that market that knows that market, you're learning from them. So when you're expanding into that market, it's easier, for you to do deals there.
Right. And
Or
sometimes people partner up with realtors too.
Yep.
They like, boots on the ground is huge.
Yep.
Is so important when in a virtual market. You need to have eyes and ears in the market that you're in.
Hmm.
Because if you imagine, like, and I've marketed out to Tampa, even Atlanta. And it's like, if I don't have anybody there, like, I'm kind of lost, right? Because
Yeah.
like, I don't know the neighborhood like that, like the ins and outs, especially if I'm just starting out. So I think this is why, like, finding, doing your own due diligence
Hmm.
in an experienced wholesaler is really important. Reaching out and adding value, again, coming in with value. Don't just ask like, hey, can you get me a deal, or can you do this for me? Like, come in with like, hey, how can I help you? And more than likely, people are going to be receptive to that. Like, yeah, bring me a lead, and we'll figure it out.
And I think we lost Gladia there for a second, but
Oh,
um,
oh,
there you go. Got you back.
I'm back.
But no, I think that's super important just because sometimes as a virtual market, you're not even going to see the property, only just the pictures. And then someone that is there is going to walk the property or introduce have the appointment for buyers to come in and see the property for themselves. So, and another thing is that a lot of times you don't want the buyer and the seller to kind of communicate. You want to have that buffer, right? And
Right,
you want someone to say, hey, if you have any questions, please direct them to, Tim.
right.
And usually a lot of the sellers will ask a lot of questions or, but when you have that buffer there, that person can always answer the questions for the sellers instead of the buyer answering the questions, right? So,
Right. Yeah, for sure. And I hope my internet doesn't cut out again. But I think it's also important to, if you have a 9 to 5,
hmm,
is like, partner up with somebody. A lot of
yeah,
times we don't have the time. to do a full deal. There's a lot that goes into it, and we'll dig into that further. But like as far as the process, but like there's a lot that goes into a deal. There's like not only just locking it up and closing, like you have to communicate, you have to market out to buyers, you have to connect with the title company, you have to, there's a lot of back and forth communication, and doing that all by yourself is a lot of work, and really and can be time consuming depending if you
Right.
have a deal that has title issues or liens or whatever the case, that you have to solve problems. Having two people on the deal is really important, because you can kind of pass the baton and be like, all right, I did my part, I'm here if you need me, but you take care of your end. And there, it's such a relief having somebody that you know can take the load off. And people are easily closing 5 to 10 deals just on JVing. Like
Yeah.
people think, oh, I want the whole piece of the pie. Like no, like let's win together, because it takes so much work. Uh, so much goes into a deal, that partnering up with each other and sharing the load, especially when you have a 9 to 5 or you have other businesses, is really vital in your success of building that momentum that you were talking about.
Yeah. I just think, you need to add that to your arsenal of, wholesaling is joint venturing, and don't shy away from that. That's an important aspect of your business. And, sometimes you might get three or four joint ventures and then just one single deal for yourself. So it
Right.
just kind of all depends on, um, you know, where the deals are coming from and how you can provide value for your fellow investor, or to the seller, right? So
Mm. Right.
you know
Yeah.
I have joint ventures where I had the buyer or I had the deal, right? So it just all depends.
Right.
um, Even if someone had proof of funds and I didn't have it in the beginning, that's another way you can joint venture too. So there's different ways
Right.
that you can joint venture to get the deal done.
Yeah, totally. But we do always say approach with caution, because
Hmm.
this is why, like, doing your due diligence is so important, and why people maybe they were ghosted in a certain situation, so they're like totally against JVing, or
Hmm.
they were done wrong. And there's a such thing as daisy chaining. Like,
Mm,
what's daisy
very true.
chaining? It's where you have wholesalers creep in pretending to be buyers, so you're marketing, say, on Facebook, Craigslist, and then you have somebody like who shows you a proof of funds, maybe, but maybe it's a proof of funds they got from someone else,
Hmm.
and then they end up selling your deal to one of their buyers, and so it ends up being like three wholesalers on the same deal, especially maybe if you're JVing, or maybe they'll wholesale it to another wholesaler. So you have to be really cautious and not getting burned that way, and it's just part of the game. But again, not having that scarcity mindset, just going in
Hmm.
and just taking it one step at a time, and kind of setting expectations. You don't want to just meet someone and be like, yeah, let's just do a deal. Like, I'm assuming with your JV process, like you've kind of done some expectations
Hmm.
on, like, okay, this is your role, this is my role, because otherwise there can be some confusion,
Right.
and especially when there's a lack of communication, things can go sour pretty quickly.
Yeah, communication is key just because, and I set the expectation up front, right? And the expectation is just that we are in constant communication on, what's going on with the deal. We're going to use my contracts, and then I'll send you a JV agreement, and then, the buyer is going to have an assignment agreement. So, and that just sets the expectation. And then I set another email chain, right?
Mm,
With the, my JV partner, and anything that happens, right? I follow that up with an email, right? So if we're talking on the
mm.
phone, something happened, I follow that up with the email. So we can always go back to the email and say, hey, on this date, this happened, not on, you remember when I talked to you on this date and you
Right.
said this? No, it's all written down. Everything is on, basically on paper, basically, and there's no confusion. And so you have to do that in your business just to be one, a little bit more professional. Two, you're setting the
Hmm.
expectation that this is how you do business. And then three, you're always covering your butt, right? Because anything can happen within the deal.
Right.
So you just want to make sure you document that process along the way um, with that particular deal with that particular JV partner.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, yeah, you brought up a really important point, which is documentation, which maybe somebody who's not used to that form of communicating, they're always like on, based off your word or like maybe
Mm-hmm.
text, which is another form of communication. But again, it's you want to have a running thread of like, hey, like based, you always want to take it to like an email. So you have some evidence if anything ever went wrong, you have like that
Mm-hmm.
communication. Um, because I've had bad experiences with JV where
Yeah.
again I didn't set that expectation from the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
and also I kind of went in with the mindset of like I want to close a deal, like money on my
Mm-hmm.
mind
Yeah.
as priority before even like thinking of the process or the expectations. If somebody's like, oh, I have this deal here, and this was out in California, like this is over $1 million deal, and we can possibly get, definitely over the assignment between the two could have been 100 for sure, 100K for sure. And so I, being new, I was like, oh, money. I already started like putting myself like in that um predicament of like,
Right.
um oh, what if what if I close 50K, like, and that's not, and Chris talks about this a lot, but I feel like you kind of have to go through it sometimes to like to learn it, and
Definitely.
because I went with that mindset, the expectations were not met in the beginning or were not set. And I think that's the most one of the most important things on top of like documenting is like yeah, setting an understanding of like this is what you bring to the table, this is what I bring, we'll do
Mm-hmm.
50-50. um and like these are the roles. So in the JV agreement,
Mm-hmm.
you've kind of talked about it, is like you want to write down, okay, I'm in charge of getting it locked up,
Right.
communication with the seller, maybe even helping you find a buyer, and yours may only be proof of funds, bringing the
Mm-hmm.
buyer. So it's very important to set those clear understandings and agreements way before you even like get started in the wholesaling process.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's very important. You bring up a good point because part of that expectation is the splits, right? So people
Mm,
might want to renegotiate the splits, because, they might have gotten the buyer to increase, their amount, and, it's a bigger spread, and they're like, hey, let's renegotiate that. But, that's why you set the expectation, you know, up front, and you sign the agreement, and this is what we're going to go forward, and that's how we're going to do it, and it's laid out like this is so it's just be on top of that, and be just communicate, and have that expectation, and that's very important. So
yeah, and then don't go in thinking about the money
yeah,
firsthand.
for
That's
sure.
just like an important thing of just any deal. But I kind of wanted to tie into like our third, because we've
Mm-hmm.
talked about process a lot. Our
Mm-hmm.
third tip, which is focusing on the process. I think the process, working virtually, is you have to have your process tight. It has to be good because again, you're not physically there.
Mm-hmm.
So there's people that you're working on. You have to have a process set from the time that you lock it up to like, okay, what's the next step? What's the next step after that? Who's my title company that I'm going to work with?
Mm-hmm.
Let me give them a call, and because again, you can't stop by the title company. And I think this is why having a realtor on your side or just boots on
Mm-hmm.
the ground, somebody who can like who understands, is really important. Because if you're not consistent with your process, that your deal flow virtually is going to be non-existent. You have to stick with it. So by focusing on your process,
Mm-hmm.
you're setting yourself for success by having expectations at every step of the way,
Mm-hmm.
from the moment you call somebody to sending out an agreement. Because I mean, Tim, let's keep it real. People aren't consistent. They there's some people are like, yeah, I marketed for a month and didn't get anything, so I'm gonna bounce. And it's
Yeah.
like just that's just not how it works.
No, no, because we're taught, and then we're also we experience because we go through this every day, is that the money is actually in the follow-up. So, you know,
Right.
you might talk to, like, let's say, five different people that day, and then you don't talk to anyone for another 3 days or 4 days. These are three or four people that you could have been talking to during those 3, 4 days, and then building up, a follow-up with them, right? So, having
Mm,
your process on that, or, when you're JVing with someone, you have them contact them when you can't contact them, right? So,
right.
whatever the case may be, it's a situation where you definitely can have a process down and s- be consistent with that process, right? When you get into that market, um, as you said, excuse me, as you said, it's a situation where you when you have those processes, it's a lot easier in that market,
Right.
because you're following everything that you set in place, right? And you know how my question to you is, how do you set up your process for that, right? So some people don't might not
Hmm.
know what that looks like or how to set up process, and then
Yeah.
focus on that process for a virtual market.
Yeah, I think your process again has to be super tight because again, and a lot of people do is they focus on the process at later on the road,
Mm, mm-hmm,
instead of like as they're going. And I think Chris has talked about this, as well as like document your process as you're going through it. So you
mm-hmm,
lock something up, write a process for that, right? Or we call it SOPs, but it doesn't have to be
mm-hmm.
that technical. It can
Right.
just be a Google Doc. I use Loom. Loom is a great tool. Loom is a video recording tool. So you can screen share and be like, all right, in this video, I'm going to go over how to cold call on this dialer. In
Mm-hmm,
this video, I'm going to go over how to follow up. In this video, I'm going to go over how to fill out a contract. And
mm-hmm,
this, like, you're literally every step of the way. So if we take a look at the wholesaling process, starting from like getting a list. All right, you get
mm-hmm,
a list. You and maybe even deeper than that. Okay, we'll do the list source cash buyer hack.
mm-hmm,
Okay, I have my hot zip codes. I'm going to enter those zip codes. I'm going to buy a list. And then I'm going to, if we just go straight like a high equity
mm-hmm.
list or something,
Sure.
I'm going to skip trace that list. Or, if you have a tool like REI Sift, which I do, I upload my list first. And then I prioritize like, okay, I don't want to skip trace the whole list because sometimes that can be pretty costly. Like skip tracing it does add up. And so
It's
you have
expensive,
to go
yeah.
back to your budget. Right. So I kind of prioritize, okay, let me focus on just absentee or let me focus on absentee vacant. Okay, I'm going to export that. I'm going to skip trace this specific list.
Mm-hmm,
Uh, and then, okay, I'm going to plug it into a dialer or into my SMS. Okay, I'm going to cold call. I'm going to text. And then, okay, I got an interested seller, right? I'm going to
mm-hmm,
try to lock them up, negotiate. Okay, I locked them up, got the contract. Okay, what's next? Title company.
mm-hmm,
Okay, I'm gonna send things over to the title company. All right, what's next? All right, find a buyer. I'm gonna
mm-hmm.
market to a buyer. Facebook, Craigslist. Okay, title has questions. Like sometimes you have to go back and forth with
Back and
between
forth, yeah.
certain processes, but if we just focus on like a straightforward progression, it is you get the buyer, and then from the buyer, um, you send an assignment agreement. Okay, you got your assignment agreement, and then from there, you send everything back to the title company. They probably connect with the buyer to get all their information, and then the seller will then cover their the seller will then also kind of reach out to the title company. So you're kind of the middle person in that.
Right.
And then if everything else goes well, you close, you get your check. So there's so much that goes into there. There are little bits, but if you break it down, you can just even break it up into smaller pieces.
Right.
Talk to
And
seller, lock it up. Yeah, get the buyer, title company,
hmm
and that's that.
and that there's, every little step has its details in those. I mean, we're talking high
Right.
level here, but um, as long as you kind of document that process and get it down to where you understand that process, then
Hmm.
these other markets are going to be a lot easier too, because um, when you are networking within your group that you're involved in, people are working that market as well, so they may have a title company or escrow company
Right.
that you can work with. And like, I'm working Kansas City market, and then Alfonso within our group, and he's also a coach too. He works Kansas City market, so he referred me to
Mhm.
a good title company out there, and
Yeah.
they're phenomenal. So it helped me with a lot of deals that I'm working right now, and past deals as well. So um,
Yeah. And you'll learn having a really strong title company will make and break or make or break your deal.
mhm,
Like that,
most
like, and
definitely.
so especially going virtual, some people may recommend it, but sometimes it just doesn't work out. You have to go through a few title companies until you find the right one. Once you find the right one, like you got to keep them happy. Like with it, send them, some DoorDash, send them like, edible arrangements, whatever. Like it's all about the relationships,
hmm
because these are the people that are gonna pay you, essentially. Like you have your deal. So it may be a thing where maybe there was a little hiccup in the title process,
hmm
but they're like, oh, okay, well, you can figure it out this way, and you're able to close a deal.
Yep.
I know horror stories with title companies that just gave up on deals, or
Oh yeah.
weren't really, they don't understand the process. So
hmm
you're having to educate them, and anytime you have to do that, it, it makes it difficult. It's more work
hmm
for you. So having we are talking high level, but having like a your good foundation of like boots on the ground and like a title company is essential in a virtual market. Um, and for me specifically is again, I kind of, my process is like I outline it, and like you said, I have little steps in between them, because you have to think about it. You're not going to be in the business forever. You're going to bring in people, on your team to do the stuff that you were doing. So if you have the documentation as you go, you don't have to do as much work, because it's always harder going back,
Right.
um, after the fact, because you have to be like, wait, how did I do that? It's a lot more work, but documenting your process is vital if you want a successful wholesaling business in general.
Yeah. I like the loom dime that you actually dropped, because it it's another way. Instead of writing everything down, you're just recording, right? You're recording and
Right.
documenting that. And so documenting doesn't really mean, write everything down or put it in a spreadsheet or put it in a
Well, I think
doc, right?
SOPs is
So,
a really technical word, like
right.
it's like standard of operations or system. See, I don't even know the the
I think
what it stands for.
standard operating procedures. Yeah.
Operating procedures. Yeah, so it's a very technical. So it can be really intimidating for somebody like that. So keep it simple. I mean, even in my 9 to 5, we're actually working on like rehauling our my department's documentation, and a lot, like, my boss is like, hey, don't worry about documenting every little thing, just create a loom,
Mm,
documenting it, because things change a lot. So
mm-hmm.
if all you have to do is like update a loom instead of updating text, that's so much easier
So
to
smart.
do, right? So you can do high level points of like
Mm-hmm.
in a document, because you have to paste the link somewhere, but but you just do a loom, and it's really inexpensive. I think they have, you can have a free account up to like 20 videos,
Yeah.
And then I think after that, it's like $6 a month. So it's totally worth doing that. I think Looms is definitely it's been a game changer for my 9 to 5 and like
Right.
how I do process. If I have a question, I just do a Loom. Like
Yeah.
forget jumping on a meeting. Let's just do a Loom. So I think that's a really great way to document and work on your process
Yeah.
without having to like make it a big deal.
Right. And you don't have to show, if you're, someone that's shy and don't want your face on there, you don't have to show your face. You just have to show
Right.
your screen
Do the
and then
audio.
just, yeah,
Right.
just do the audio on it. So it's not really not that intimidating. It's just, showing, documenting the process, exactly what you do, right? And talking through the
Yeah.
steps. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And another tip that I learned from REI Sift is because I took they have like this challenge, all lead AL it's called ALGC, so all leads generation.
hmm
I can't even remember. I'm so bad with acronyms today. My bad, y'all. But
it's all good.
so basically it goes through a challenge of like how to organize your documentation. And so what I liked, what one thing that they did was they have a spreadsheet
hmm
and they have a like a task on every line item, and they have a loom attached to it.
Oh,
So it's
cool.
like how to skip trace. There's a loom link to it. How to like everything from like the
hmm
process I was talking about. How to buy a list, how to
hmm
skip trace, how to upload it into batch dialer, for example, how to upload to a dialer, how to
hmm
respond. Like it's literally a line item. So you have a basically a glossary or a table of contents of like every step. So you can just hand that to a VA
hmm
because eventually, like I said, you're not going to be in the business whether you're virtual or local. You have a document you can hand off and be like, here are all the videos. Take a look. If you're ever stuck, go back to a loom that I did. And then again, if you update it, if something changes in your process, you just redo the loom or
Yeah.
have somebody else redo the loom.
And it's funny, like a part of all these processes, there's like maybe different tools that you can utilize along the way, right? And the loom is this one tool to help you document that, right? And then, you can go back and look at those looms to make sure the processes are right for you opening a market, right? And that could
Hmm.
be like step by step, if you're hiring more people, then, and utilizing this particular tool to document your process, is just going to be a lot simpler as you onboard people and grow your business as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think process is probably, I mean, along with research,
hmm
your process is one of the most important parts of like virtual wholesaling. Just in general, like if you want to take your wholesaling business to the next level, because again, I think people get stuck in like, well,
hmm
I'm just going to do it myself. I'm just going to
hmm
do it all. And sure, you can, but if your goal is to scale, you're not going to get very far. You need
Yeah.
others. You need the help of others to be successful. So I think that that's just like key in any
hmm
business is to do that. But one question I did have for you, Tim, is like, how long do you think when you say you try out a market, how long do you think you should be marketing in that market until
Um,
like you're like, okay, this isn't enough or this isn't
right.
working. I'm a bounce.
Well, I think it really depends on the market, and then also from your research, what you're finding out, right? You may, have a cluster of developments or a cluster of buyers that are renovating in that area. But if you go out, like let's say a mile or so, that actually is not feasible, and there's not many other houses in the area that are renovating, right? So it's just kind of that particular spot. So I think it really kind of just depends on your market. But if you're in a market that you get into and there's a lot of business being done, and you get into it, and you know um, you're in it for a month, 2 months, you go down to 6 months and you still haven't gotten any traction and your follow-ups are kind of falling through. So you need to really evaluate at that time, talk to people that are in your market, talk to a real estate agent before you actually pull the trigger to move on to a different market. I know that, ever since I started, I'm still in the markets that I'm in, right? And I'm
Mm,
consistently working those markets. So because for me to understand that market, and because markets are gonna shift depending on the cities that you're in, just because of what's happening in a community, jobs, all of that is affects, the people buying and
mm-hmm.
selling their homes, right? So um, then you kind of analyze all that data and then kind of maybe shift your marketing. Instead of absentee, you're getting into pre-foreclosures now, just because a lot of people have lost their jobs in that particular city or so, right?
Right.
So you need to shift your marketing, so maybe not shift out of the city that you're in, or the virtual market that you're in. You shift your marketing um, list based on what you're researching, because you don't just research just to get into market, research as you're in the market, right? As well
Mm.
too. So that's something that I would advise people to continue to do.
Yeah, it's definitely a bar. I think people go in maybe just cold calling and they'll cold call for a couple months and be like, ah, this isn't working out. Well, did you try like, maybe asking two other wholesalers, hey, what are you doing? Like that are maybe in your market and they're closing deals. Like, hey, what are you doing? Obviously, maybe you don't want to copy like everything, but
Hmm.
maybe they're having success direct mailing, or a combo of direct mailing and SMS or something. So it may be worth kind of redirecting it to doing that perhaps.
Hmm.
And just it's all trial and error. Yeah, I do agree. Before jumping into a new market or giving up on a market, like you have to try it out, and also keeping track of the data.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of people just leave without understanding like the KPIs or the data, and like well, how many people did I contact or did I speak with? Because a lot of times, like maybe it's not so bad, and maybe in your own mind, because you're not tracking it, you
Hmm.
don't you don't you don't really know. So if you're going to try a different marketing technique, like track it. Be like, okay, I've
Hmm.
sent out 50 direct mailers
Definitely.
every day. Um, what's my ROI on that, like return of investment? Um, and if I'm getting a few more leads that compared to cold calling, like let me the next week I'm gonna do 100 a day or
Hmm.
something,
Hmm.
and see what happens. So I love that trial and error instance. But I like this comment by Sophia. Shout out to the
Hey,
fam.
shout out.
Um, and I think this is really important. This is kind of like talking about like your systems that you have in place, especially when you bring on a VA. And both of us had to let go of our VA.
That's right.
But I think that having like the right systems and a direction for your VAs is really important. Um, because again, if there's nothing there for the VA, they're going to kind of adapt to what maybe that they know, or that they're familiar with, and it's totally off of what you're expecting. So I think sometimes you need to do a reset or go back to the basics, because sometimes
Hmm.
when you over analyze some things, or you don't really see the bigger picture. So sometimes you have to reset. So working that virtual market again, or any like wholesaling, I think it's really important to focus on the basics and just add on like little by little as you go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that
Yeah.
was a great comment too, just because the VAs, and you have to you definitely have to have your processes down when you start to hire, and make sure that they're following what your steps are, right? Your system is. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah, it
so
starts
it's
with you.
yeah.
So, and it's you leading by example. And it's always easier said than done. Even for me is like, in my 9 to 5, I'm working on like documentation, and sometimes it's easy to just be like, yeah, just do this. But as business owners, it's kind of our responsibility, right? We owe it to
Hmm.
ourselves to to put in these systems so that we're not working so hard. We have somebody we're bringing on as a VA. So how can you help them help you,
Right,
basically?
right. Absolutely.
I see
We got a question
another
here.
question.
Yeah.
Hector, what's going on, man?
Hey, Hector.
What are you guys doing to research new markets? So what are you doing? Or have you jumped in a new market since?
I just actually opened up Houston, so the
Okay.
Houston
Tell
market.
tell us about how you research that, or like what made you decide to jump into that market.
Actually, ever since we were in Houston, I think I was always wanting to do it, and it's taken me since then to now, right? Just because
Mm,
where my business is, and then also me maybe JVing with people in Houston market, and having a relationship there to where someone can, also learn, but also make the calls, and then get into that market too. So I know that. Um, Houston and Kansas City are non-disclosure states. So
mm,
that's part of your research that needs to come up, right? So these are states that don't report the actual sale of the, property, right? So they don't disclose the
mm,
amount. So it's a harder in those states to actually comp because you're not seeing what is selling in those areas. So there's some ways around that, some other data that you can do if you have a real estate agent and tap into the MLS. Those are some of the ways that you can actually get that
yeah,
information, right? So definitely it's all in the research. So like I had done the zip code hack or, list source hack, definitely. But it's not just pulling those zip codes and then skip tracing them. It's pulling those zip codes, looking at those zip codes, looking at the houses in those areas, right?
right.
It's gonna,
You gotta go deeper.
yeah, it's a process. It's not like, okay, I'm gonna go into this market and then do this. Yeah, you know, that's what you're taught to do and all that, but you still have to do your due diligence and in that market
Right.
to see if you're because me getting into that state is going to be different from you getting in that state because you're going to market differently because
Hmm.
the way you market is the way you've been doing deals, right? And that's
Hmm.
working for
Right.
you. And I'm going to market the way I've been doing deals in that market as well, but also looking at the data too, and you're going to be looking at the data. So our ways of marketing and getting into that market are going to be different. So that's why some people do better in some markets and some people don't, just because they have a different process or they have a different way of marketing in that. So that's why,
Right.
one of the main questions we get all the time what market are you in, right? What list are
Right.
you
Right.
pulling, right? So, I'll tell them, but at the same time, they have to do their own research to actually get that done. So, um,
And I think people want to take the easy way out. And I
yeah.
think, again, that kind of goes into like jumping on a bandwagon.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's pretty funny because, Chris has a JV partnership program with different markets that he's in. And, we had a meeting, and he, he, he literally had a meeting just to tell us, guys, Birmingham, don't market in Birmingham. Don't like everybody's picked Birmingham to market.
Yeah.
And he was like, there's other markets too. And it's only because people he was like, why are you guys picking Birmingham? People are like, well, I think in one of your calls you mentioned Birmingham is a hot market or up and
Yeah.
coming or something, and people just like flocked to that market.
Yeah.
And I
The
think,
power and
like, if you
influence.
are gonna, right, the power of influence, which, of course we're gonna take Chris's word, but do your own due diligence. The same way it's
Hmm.
like, you get an agreement, review it with an attorney to make sure it works in your markets. But I liked how you took a step deeper in like the list source hack by like looking in those, say you have a zip code, throw that into Google and see what kind of neighborhood these cash buyers are buying in.
Mm-hmm.
If you go in a neighborhood and it's like a really like affluent area where it's really rich, like huge mansions, maybe you don't want to focus. Maybe it's like hedge funds, I don't know, focusing on that. You want to maybe target a more distressed area or
Mm-hmm.
neighborhood. So maybe that zip code didn't work, but maybe a few others did. So you want to take a step deeper and like don't just do just enough. Like
Mm-hmm.
go into it. Once you pick a market, commit to it.
Yeah.
But for me, the way I research a market, or I've learned to, is something I've learned from McLean. I forget his first name, but he's done a like amazing job with like REI Sift and
Mm.
just kind of stretching his resources. But one he did a webinar on like finding your markets,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the things he does is he also kind of takes a deeper look. He's like, there's three different tiers of type of markets. You have your primary market, which is like a San Francisco or like
Mm-hmm.
a Dallas or even like a Houston, where
Mm-hmm.
it's like if you're all up in the middle there, it's like that's where everybody's at, right?
Right.
That's where we talk about competition. So you have to go in with more money, or be more strategic about it. But then you take a step out of that, you have your secondary market. So in California, for example, a primary market is the Bay Area,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe a secondary market is Sacramento, which is a
Mm-hmm.
little bit, it's becoming more and more popular because again, people are moving out of the Bay Area. So that's maybe something you can kind of hit. But then you have a outer layer, which is a tertiary, which means like the third market,
Mm-hmm.
which is like a third level, which is kind of in between. It's like not necessarily rural where it's like out in the country, but it's like somewhere in between, like a kind of a hot market and not. And that's where maybe you want to focus on between the second and third,
Mm-hmm.
because people aren't really going to target that as much. They're focusing on the primary markets. So that's where I've kind of found success too in the Northern California area, is like I'll look in there and be like, and I think PropStream has this tool that's like the hot areas. You can see the recent sales in the last 6 months, the last year, the last 3 months. So I
That's
see like
awesome.
if it's red in that area, like, all right, maybe I need to look more into that. And then the next thing I do is like, once I decide like, okay, this city, this area seems to be pretty hot, I go into a site called data.io, or I think
Mm-hmm.
it's something like that. It's just like a census website. So if I type in a market, or if I type in a city, it'll show like, okay, the poverty rate for the last year is this percent. The annual revenue, or not revenue, but the annual salaries for people is this much. The house value is this much. So if the average salary is maybe 50K a year, the poverty rate is like maybe 10% or less, or 15 and less, but the house
Mm-hmm.
values are 300. That's a pretty good, like, where it's like I'm not talking to people that are making over 100K a year, which is like the Bay Area. I mean, I don't want to sum it up because that isn't the case, but it's a really convoluted
Mm-hmm.
market. The market there is crazy. Um, but I can see like, okay, it's a growing market, so most of the houses maybe can be beat up because people aren't making very much, especially like in the Northern California. So I'm gonna test it out. I'm gonna target that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I use data to my advantage when looking at the markets I'm in, and then going a step closer, or a step deeper, which is researching, looking in the neighborhoods, it kind of houses within those zip codes. So that has really helped out with us for sure, because I have a better understanding
Mm-hmm.
by looking at the data, looking at the numbers. So if you guys want to try that out, definitely. If you guys want to hit me up too, I have that webinar link somewhere where he literally breaks that down, and he kind of goes through like how he picks a new market.
Mm-hmm.
So hope you guys found that helpful.
Yeah, maybe we can post in a link on the description of the YouTube channel, so that way, and then
Yeah,
anybody hit us up, we can send you that link, or Gladia can send you that link as well too. So that's great.
for sure.
I know this is what it's all
Yeah,
about, Sophia.
yeah, that's why I created the podcast. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we got people like us, kind of representing and bringing, everyone kind of killing it in real estate to showcase them. You know what I mean? Like, we sometimes don't get a chance to do that. So, um, definitely can't wait to get you on the show.
Mm-hmm.
Get everybody. It's kind of a thing when once you come on, you can like bring your buddies on and like, kind of brag about them. So that's something.
Yeah, I'm excited about that because they're an amazing couple, and then their business is amazing, and they have an amazing story. So, stay tuned for that episode coming up soon for sure.
Yeah, definitely. That'll be a good one. Um, but yeah, we're approaching the hour mark. That's crazy. Like how
I know.
like it's still amazed. Like we're just talking.
No, we're just
Um,
talking,
but
just trying to give some tips.
yeah, it's work for us. But yeah, I mean, if you guys, we do have like a couple more minutes left here. If you guys have any other questions that you guys want to ask, definitely let us know. But yeah, maybe Tim, to kind of end, like what's kind of your goal with this with Houston? Are you looking for like just wholesaling? Or are you looking for maybe developments? Because I know that's something you're
Yeah.
into too with the family office.
Yeah, I think mostly wholesaling right now. Just understanding that market, and already got like a few leads already when we just started, which is
Hmm.
great. So it's been good so far, but the ultimate goal is just to do more deal flow there, jump into some other opportunities of maybe development, or a fix and flip, or just buying a land and putting, um, a duplex structure or a multi-unit structure on there that is
Hmm.
probably less than, 4 units, but at
Right.
least, having that, and then building out, a rental strategy or Airbnb strategy there. So, but that's kind of, as we get more deals in, those strategies kind of will evolve from there. But it all starts from, wholesaling in that market, and getting deals locked up, and just, building the relationships with buyers out there. And because
Right.
I know a lot of people do a list and not the LLCs. They'll just do individual. I actually do
Mm.
LLCs because
Yeah,
sometimes
me too.
you get a hold of people and they're actual buyers, right? And they've bought
Mm.
many times, so I add them to the my buyers list at that time. So,
Right.
and then they might be developing, you know, a community or something, right? How do I get involved with that? Or, just, having those conversations. And I understand like people really getting into this right now may not have that mindset, right? They're just looking for the deal, but you just gotta take a breath, relax,
Yeah,
and
see the bigger picture.
yeah, yeah, bigger picture, and talk to people and have conversations, and don't be afraid of the conversation, wherever it takes you, you
Right.
know. So,
Yeah, just be yourself and just add value. That's all we can ever ask. But kind of the same, like real estate is all reputation too. So you always want to go in with like adding value and just helping others, and the rest people will notice that, especially if you start like closing deals consistently. People will notice it and they will want to work with you.
hmm
Especially if you close deals and you reach out like, hey, did you have any other properties or know somebody who is interested? Like, there's another referral that you can use. So people, I think the word is like, people buy business from people they like or that
hmm
they enjoy, right?
right, right,
So I think always kind of going in with again the long term vision, not the instant gratification of like, yeah, this is a quick 5K, this is a quick 10K. Going in with like the bigger vision of like, I want to
hmm
build something here, and not burning your bridges.
right. I just wanted to share a story too, is that I connected with the title company that was in Colorado because one of my markets is Colorado, just to wish them
Hmm.
like Happy New Year, just to retouch, in the first of the year.
Hmm.
And so the last deal I did with them turned into four other closings for them. So
Mm.
my my close sparked a relationship that helped them close four more deals in
Mm.
that. So she was telling me the stories that because her and my buyer went to high school together,
Oh,
and
wow.
so they had that connection, and then they kind of reconnected, but he fixed that house up, sold it, used her to close that, right? And
Right.
then the person that bought that bought another house and closed through her as well too. So like it started a chain reaction of
It's a
her
full
getting a lot of
circle.
business. So she's like, whenever you're ready, I'm ready. Give me some more business. Like
Yeah,
so you
yeah.
just never know. Like
And they want that. That's why you want a good
yeah.
title company. I mean, for me, the one I've used out here locally, they branch out to different to various counties, so it's really great. But they've wished me happy birthday.
Hmm.
I also just check in. Sometimes like a little too much TMI. Sometimes where it's like I don't want to hear how your crazy weekend went. Like telling me I had a little too much fun.
Right.
But like use your title company too, like if especially if you're virtual, like if you have a good relationship, they can give you free lists too. That's another
Hmm.
kind of gem too, is
Yep.
my title company gave me like free data. Like I think it was mainly like high equity, but they'll be like, what do you need, because they want your business.
Hmm.
So don't be afraid to reach out to your title company. Be nice to them, of course, because again,
Most
it's all
definitely.
relationships. And ask like, hey, can I get a high equity list? And a lot of times it's free because they have that data. You may have to clean it up a little bit, but that's just free data without you having to go and buy it. So
Hmm.
title, don't underestimate the power of a good title company and the relationship with that. So
You know what, G? I'm going
yeah,
to do that this week. Contact
do
some
it.
title companies and ask for lists. I'm going
Yeah,
to do it.
and see, I mean, they have the data. I think for like specific lists, you still have to pay, but if you're able to get free data, like why not? That's $100 you saved, or 300, however many. They just ask like, hey, tell me the zip codes you want, and we'll pull it for you. So
Hmm.
um, yeah, guys, I hope you guys got a lot out of this. This was
Yeah,
really fun.
super
Kind of
appreciate y'all.
digging deep. Yeah, appreciate everybody that's in the chats and for your questions, and everybody viewing us right now. We appreciate all your support. Don't forget, follow. Wait. Here we go. Follow us on IG, Real Estate Gladia. I'm like, can
I
I?
know,
No,
right?
nope, I can't.
The
Mr.
mirror.
Tim, Mr. Tim REI. Follow us on IG. We also have our podcast has an IG. Maybe we should put it here at some point. Get
Yeah.
underscore the bag podcast. We'll also share it in the description notes as well. But really enjoy having you guys here every Wednesday, 8 a.m. PST, 11 a.m. EST. I always get the time zones confused.
I know, right?
So really, we have some amazing things in store over the next, over the year, and we have amazing guests coming up. So stay tuned. Reach out to us, subscribe, hit those reminders
Yep.
because it does help boost YouTube's algorithm. And we'll catch y'all next week.
All right. See you guys.
All right, peace out, y'all.